All right, welcome back. This piece of the rewards lecture is a quick look at 8 different kinds of rewards, and is primarily motivated by this reference here. So Wang and Son's paper from September 2011. And they basically identified these 8 types of rewards. Now, prior to this, game researchers kind of looked at classifying rewards, mostly in RPGs, but with a little bit of generalizability. But this was like back in 2001, like Halford and Halford, I believe. And they kind of classified all rewards as falling under like glory, things that players do for glory, sustenance, to sustain gameplay, access to get access to more of the game, and facility, which is kind of like making the game easier. So Wang and Sun kind of took this as a baseline and said, okay, well, let's break this down a little bit further, because there are different things that can fall under these umbrellas, and this doesn't quite describe rewards, at least the way that we would like to. And so they break it down into kind of these 8 things. Score systems, which are partially related to glory. Experience and leveling systems, which are more closely related to facility, making games easier. Item granting rewards, which can fall under either or both of those. Rewards that are collectible or usable resources, which are used again for sustenance within the game space. Achievement systems, again, glory. Feedback messages, which is more like praise. It's kind of fits none of these depending on how you look at it. Plot animations and pictures, which follows through with access to like other game content, and unlocking mechanisms, which again kind of fall under that umbrella of access. So you can see how that old framework, while still useful, didn't really fit or didn't really describe the kind of breadth of rewards that are available to players. So let's kind of take a brief look at each of these for this video. So scoring systems, pretty easy, right? This is just numbers that mark player performance, and we can look all the way back to like the 1980s as seeing scoring as something that game designers and researchers have investigated as to say, okay, well, what makes a game fun? The idea being like, hey, the higher average score is, maybe the more people are interacting with the game, therefore maybe it's more fun. So you can agree or disagree with that, but I think that it's interesting to think about this as far back as that as well. Scores are an interesting reward as well, because while they can affect gameplay indirectly, maybe they change different things about the game visuals, they can change things about the state of the game, they don't generally have a direct impact on the game. More often, scoring and scoring systems are tools that they're rewards that players get, but they're primarily like, sure. Sorry. They're primarily tools that allow a player to assess their own performance, or compare their performance to either their past performances or performances of others. So it's a very kind of like comparative thing. And again, it's kind of rooted in that idea of rewards for glory for the players. Similar but not the same as scoring systems are experience and leveling. And okay, these are really popular in games where players are able to develop or control their own avatar, and typically it's all over the place now. Players level up when a player meets specific goals, whether that's story-based goals, experience related goals. And typically leveling systems are rooted not in glory and hey, I'm the best at this game, but they're rooted in the idea of facility, where as you level up in a game, the game becomes easier. they enhance these kinds of rewards enhance your character's ability or proficiency, whether it's new skills, more health, higher stats, anything like that. And this is kind of like the biggest difference, I would think, between scoring systems and leveling systems, where while score can kind of be looked at to assess a player's performance, experience and leveling isn't really used for ranking like that. Experience and leveling is really more indicative of the time that a player spends playing a game rather than skill. If a game has a leveling system, you can spend a lot of time and get a really high level, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily like good at that game, just that you've spent a lot of time playing it. Up next are systems that grant items. Basically, these are all the systems that we use to give virtual items that can be used by players or their avatars in games. And again, depending on player interest and how they're integrated, they can be used for glory or for facility, depending on what the properties of these rewards actually are. And part of that depends on player perception and player interest in them as well. But item granting systems used effectively can really encourage exploration of game worlds, which is useful for us because it gives players a bit of downtime, or in kind of low story points, having the opportunity to acquire items or be granted something helps maintain the player's interest between kind of those major plot points or major encounters. Up next, again, similar but not the same, are collectible and usable resources. These are all about sustenance. We think of collectible or resources in general as valuables that a player can use in some way that affects gameplay. These can be crafting resources. These can be lives. These can be health pickups, mana orbs, whatever. And again, it's all about sustaining and continuing to play the game longer. And so, again, we see that these are a little similar to, item granting systems. I think, again, kind of like the difference between scoring and leveling, the difference between granting item systems and collectible or usable resources is that resources are used practically within the game. They offer the player some kind of timely support in order to continue playing the game, whereas those item systems are more about players collecting, showing off those rewards, or again, comparing them socially with other players. So items are kind of solidly about progress and achievement, whereas resources are more kind of like just-in-time support. Achievement systems we all know and love. I remember the days before achievement systems existed, and I don't know. Anyway, not an interesting story. But achievements, as you know, are titles that are bound to player avatars or player accounts, and players collect them by fulfilling certain conditions in games. We can design achievements for all kinds of things. And the most well-designed achievements are, they encourage players to complete specific tasks, to explore and interact the game world, or even play in challenging ways or other non-standard methods of play. And so we can use achievements or achievement systems to kind of signpost interesting things that players can do in games that they might not have originally thought about. And so they can do some interesting things. Furthermore, achievements are collectible, and sometimes they can provide multiple levels of goals for various different challenges. And you can see, again, I could talk about achievements for a while, but I'll share some interesting ones here that I think are interesting. Like, oftentimes you see kind of like the challenging, or like the rare achievements that you can compare or like post on your profile that you've got. So like in this case, mostly invincible, complete the game without dying more than once. Again, something that's challenging, something that encourages players to achieve mastery of the game and its systems, and really perform well throughout that game. And then you have kind of the achievements that encourage interesting or non-standard play. To date, my favorite achievement ever is from Legend of Grimrock 2, and it is kill a monster by throwing pants at it. I do have this achievement. Thank you for asking. But yeah, so like, again, interesting style of play, and shows the player some possibilities about how they can interact with that space. Sorry, I'm rambling. I just looked at my recording time and it's a bit longer than I thought it would be. Anyway, up next is feedback messages. And these are just like pieces of praise, little delightful things, little bits of juice that make players feel good, to provide instant rewards. So these are all the things that we do to provide instant and positive feedback for a player performing a successful action. Looking at rhythm games, you can see this all over the place. DDR, but you could certainly look at, Beatmania, or the tapping game, or Rhythm Heaven. I don't know why the name of it is escaping me, but you get like perfect or great or flashing lights, and you're like, oh, cool, awesome. And these kinds of feedback messages can be pictures, they can be sound effects, they can be video clips, they can be particles. But these are interesting because this kind of reward is not collectible. It doesn't make the game easier. It doesn't really affect the game in any way, and you can't really compare with other people. Like, I can't, how many times my screen flashes versus how many times your screen flashes is not really useful information for me or you as a player. But these kinds of things are really valuable in the sense of praise that they evoke, which again can affect the emotions or behaviors of players playing. And so these are important to not discount. And again, you can take this all the way back to flow theory and say that these can also like impact a player's sense of flow as well. Up next, plot animations and pictures. Fairly straightforward. These are rewards that are used to follow important events in games, whether that's beating a level, defeating a boss, or finishing the game. And plot animations and pictures are, basically there as motivation for players to advance the story, or to provide a sense of closure depending on where in the story a player is. And there's additional ways that these provide fun, right? Like animations, pictures, cutscenes are usually visually attractive. They usually show something interesting. And on top of that, they serve as milestones that mark player achievement. Again, because of where they are located, usually when you place them at important story beats or important level beats, they kind of mark that section of gameplay as being over, and you're like, cool, I'm on to like the next important piece. And finally, we come to unlocking mechanisms, which is a kind of a broad category of rewards that give player access to game content once certain requirements are met. And this can be as simple as you beat one level and you unlock the next level. These can be secret content, whether it's characters, levels, other game modes. But again, these kind of tie into how we think about information in games, and thinking about how to design motivating game environments where we provide some incomplete information about that game or about that environment, and players access it, play around with it, and eventually uncover some secret or uncover some new piece. Again, whether this is just the transition from level 1 to level 2, or whether it is like solving some grand mystery within the game's code and realizing something cool about the story and finding some new features. Um, and again, this is a pretty popular reward system because it's seen all throughout games where players are rewarded as the game progresses. The game kind of gradually exposes hidden parts of the game world. So that can be either the world itself or, again, other systems, features, or mechanics within the game. So, thanks for all of this. Sorry for the rambling, and I will see you in the next one.